So people are always asking us, what are our daily drinkers? What are those shelf-available, affordable bourbons that you can go to any store and pick up and keep on your shelf and enjoy every day? Well, if you want to know our top 10 affordable sippers, stick around.
So before we get started, we're so glad that you're here watching, and we're going to keep churning out this free content right here on YouTube and on your favorite podcast player. But if you want a little bit extra, you want some behind the scenes, we'd love to invite you to go over to Patreon and join Bourbon Real Talk Plus. We have all kinds of bonus content. And in fact, Wes, we are going to be having some extra content from this episode because after we get done, I'm going to blind him on my top 5. And he's going to blind me on his top 5.
That's going to be good stuff.
It's going to be good stuff. So if you want to see that type of additional content, barrel picks, things like that, live in-person events, online events, go on and check out Bourbon Real Talk Plus. So,
I guess we got to start the episode like we do most, and that's with a disclaimer.
With a disclaimer.
Because all of you haters out there get your panties in a wad whenever we don't. So, this is our top 10.
Right.
Okay? These are 10 bourbons, shelf-available, daily drinkers that we, Wes and Randy, enjoy. All right? I picked 5. Randy picked 5. We didn't know what each other were picking. I said, hey, these are the 5 that I really like and I drink on most every day. And he sent the same list to me. And here we are. This is what we're going over. And so if you don't like these bourbons, we don't blame you. Guys, this is your palate, your palate. Enjoy what you like. Drink what you drink. And this is just our personal preference.
Right. And also keep in mind, these are personal preferences lately.
Right. Yeah.
And that's one of the lessons we want you to learn from this episode is that you're not, just don't pick one thing and drink it all the time, right? Like my preferences shift and I'll get into a mess of bottles and I'll be drinking them a lot. And then I kind of mosey on over here and move. And truth be told, some of Wes's bottles probably would have been on my list because those are often some of my daily drinkers too. So, you know, we're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
Also, all the prices.
Yeah, the prices are suspect to change. So we're going to tell you what we get our bottles at and everything here locally where we're at in Texas. Of course, if you're somewhere different, the price point may be different, and some of these bottles may even be a little bit harder for you to find. But we tried to stick with shelf-available stuff that we see quite often down here and that we really enjoy.
Yeah.
So let's get it kicked off.
All right. We're going to start with, I put all 5 of yours together.
Okay,
so we'll
awesome.
start with yours.
All right.
And also, no particular order on mine. I'm not sure if you ordered yours.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
I kind of rotate around. But again, this is lately what I've been enjoying. And to kick off my list, my number 1 pick was the Knob Creek 9-year, of course. It's at most every bar I go to. It's definitely on the shelf at the stores that I attend and frequent often. And so it's a daily drinker for me. Of course, my friends over at Jim Beam, I call them my friends because I love everything they do. It's a 100 proofer. As you're going to see with our lists, we're high proofers. And so a lot of our stuff is at that 100 plus. But this is a good starting point for me at 100 proof. The price point is great. $29, $49. So you're right under that $30 mark. And for me, that's a great daily drinker.
And a little factoid on this one. I do research on these and I try to find new factoids, so I'm not always saying the same thing. And I went to the Wikipedia page for Knob Creek.
Really?
And it said that it shares the same recipe with Basil Hayden's.
Really?
Which is 63% corn, 27% rye, and 10% malted barley. But in actuality, it is the same recipe as Jim Beam, which is 76% corn, 14% rye, and 10% malted barley. They have 2 mash bills, 1 high rye, 1 low rye. And for the first time ever, I edited a Wikipedia page.
Really?
Yes.
Did you set them straight?
I did.
Awesome.
I went in and I switched Basil Hayden's out for Jim Beam.
Yes. Well, I think that you should begin your conquest to go through every bourbon's Wikipedia and set them all straight.
To be honest, most of the time I just believe the wrong thing, but this time I happen to know the truth. So.
All right. Well, next up on the list is another one that Randy and I probably share as far as our favorites. And this one's been one of my favorites for a while, and that is the Wild Turkey 101. Produced, of course, by Wild Turkey. The proof, again, obvious, 101. But the price point, guys, is super hard to beat. $21.50 for a bottle. I mean, this is a $7.50. You can get the giant ones, which you usually keep regularly on your shelf, and you can get that price point even lower. So, guys, this is a daily drinker for me. Obviously, neat on the rocks, cocktails, it all works for me. And I'm sure you've got an interesting factoid about Wild Turkey.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about this one is its versatility. Right? Because this is one that you can give somebody a pour neat, but then if you poured it in Coke, no one's going to freak out. Right? And that's why I always have it around. The interesting factoid about this is that Wild Turkey launched in 1942, but was contract distilled until 1971. This was just a contract distilled whiskey. In 71, Austin Nichols, the parent company, bought Boulevard Distillery, and they renamed it the Wild Turkey Distillery.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. And moving right along to another one of my favorites from the Jim Beam collection over there is the OGD, the Old Granddad 114. Guys, and I'll be honest, the reason I love this is not just because it's delicious, but 114 proof for $22.50 is hard to find. To get something that high a proof, that full of a flavor, the price, the proof ratio is spot on for me, guys. It's hard to beat. So that's why it's on my list as a daily drinker. Anytime I see it, I pick it up.
A little interesting factoid about this. So the Old Granddad that's on the label of Old Granddad is Basil Hayden.
Basil Hayden.
It's actually Basil Hayden.
Sir Basil.
So Basil Hayden and Old Granddad are actually the same whiskey. They're both that higher rye mash bill, the 27% rye mash bill that we talked about from Jim Beam. The Old Granddad is 114 proof versus 80 proof of the Basil Haydens.
And I think that's the reason why I don't love the Basil Haydens, but I love OGD and a lot of the other Jim Beam stuff. It's the one Jim Beam product I don't love. I mean, I drink it, I enjoy it, but it's not like something I go to all the time. Maybe it's the proof.
And it's twice the price. So you're paying almost double the money for significantly less alcohol.
Yes.
Right? And so that's why I just don't buy Basil Hayden's.
Got some expensive water in there.
Expensive water. What do you got for number 4?
Number 4 is one that I turned you on to recently. Not recently, but a few months back. You hadn't tasted the glory, or at least appreciated the glory.
I don't know how I'd overlooked it.
You've overlooked it for so long, but it is the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. Now, again, this is one that's going to blow your mind. When you look at this price point and you taste this at 100 proof, your socks are liable to fly off of your feet, guys. This is one that will knock your socks off every day. So strongly recommend. It's from Heaven Hill, of course, where Evan Williams is produced. $13.99, $14
$14
for 100 proof, really delicious whiskey, guys. I don't know what you're waiting on. At least pick up a bottle and try it. It's worth it at that price point.
Yeah, it's one of the highest quality price ratios in whiskey for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, little factoid: Evan Williams was a real person who immigrated to Kentucky in 1780. In 1783, he started an illegal operating distillery. Okay. And in fact, he was indicted by a grand jury in 1788 for not having proper licenses for his distillery. And in 1802, his distillery was cited for dumping waste into the Ohio River, which is hilarious because he was the harbor master in charge of keeping the river clean at the time. Obviously an enterprising businessman, but had that early frontier mentality of, just get it done and make your money, I guess. But
I like him even more now. I like Evan Williams. That sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the waste in the river, that's not really cool. But
it was 1800s.
He was a renegade.
They didn't worry about it back then.
He was a rebel, man. I like that. Rounding out my top 5 is the Maker's Mark 101. This was a hard one for me because there are a few Maker's Marks that I really rotate around to on a regular basis, but this one stands out to me at that 101 proof. I would say the cash strength stuff I really like, but it's a little bit higher price point and harder to find at some points in some areas as well. So I stuck with the 101. I really enjoy it for $36.50, guys. It's really a good buy. The regular Maker's Mark is just a little bit too light for my tasting at 90 proof, and so the cask strength drinks are a little hot for some people. So I keep the 101 regularly on my shelf, not just for myself to enjoy, but for when friends come over as well.
Yeah. So a little factoid about this product. The mash bill was decided by Bill Samuels Sr. after eating bread his wife Margie baked in various mash bill ratios.
Really?
Yeah, so they weren't making
idea.
test batches of whiskey. They were making loaves of bread and tasting it. And based on the flavor of the bread, that's how they picked their mash bill.
That's a great idea. Whiskey bread?
Whiskey bread. And the other interesting thing about Maker's Mark is they're the only major Kentucky distillery that still rotates their barrels in the warehouse. So barrels up top get more heat, they age faster. Barrels at the bottom can sometimes lose proof because of the evaporative loss of the barrels at the top. It gets sucked up at the bottom. And so to keep all the barrels aging evenly, they rotate them, and that is extremely expensive. So it's pretty commendable that they'd spend that money to create consistency. Hey, nice hat.
Hey, thanks. Nice lanyard.
Nice rocks glass.
Thanks, man. Nice travel case.
Nice blend topper.
Thank you. Nice candle.
Nice bottle bag.
Thanks, man. That's a nice tumbler.
Nice women's t-shirt.
Oh, thanks. Nice extra schmedium shirt. Get yourself some nice things and get all the compliments that come along with it. Shop bourbonrealtalk.com.
Number 6 on the total list, and the first one that I added was OID Forester 1920. It is a product from OID Forester. Proof is 115. It is $55.99, so a little bit more than some of the others. But why is it on my list? Strictly a flavor thing. Right? It's really full flavored without being too hot. It's been a consistent product for me. So their blending and batching has been good. Factoid about this brand, it has been continuously sold since 1870.
Even through Prohibition?
Even through Prohibition, because they had a medicinal license. And it is the first whiskey that was exclusively sold in a sealed bottle. So in the 1870s, glass manufacturing is not what it was today. All the bottles had to be hand blown, so it was a very expensive idea to put your whiskey in individual bottles. But because they could sell it sealed, they were marketing it as medicinal whiskey. And so you knew it hadn't been tampered with. So
that was one that was on my shelf for daily drinker list when I first got started into bourbon, and I've rotated back to it several times. But one I've always enjoyed, and the number one bourbon that I misspell is OID Forester. All the time.
I have to search it.
I throw 2 R's in that bad boy every single time, and I don't know why, but I do it.
It's a whole thing. So the next one for me, number 7 on the list, is the Benchmark Full Proof Buffalo Trace product. It is full proof. It goes in the barrel at 125, so they put it in the bottle at 125, and it is priced at $21.99. And this is another one like the old Granddad 114 that it's just a really great proof price ratio. I like it because it's grapey and not as much cherry. It's Buffalo Trace Mash Bill 1. Usually on Mash Bill 1 I get a cherry component, but when it's young it tastes grapey. And so some people call this Stag Junior because it's pretty close in proof to the Stags. But to me, it tastes more like a cash strength Buffalo Trace because they're similar in age and they both have that grapey flavor. Factoid, it was created by Seagram's in the late 1960s and was originally probably distilled at the Four Roses distillery because Seagram's owned them after Prohibition. They bought them. And what I find interesting is that when they released Benchmark, they released it as like a premium product. But when they bought Four Roses, they bought the number 1 premium bourbon in the United States. So Four Roses was number 1 in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And Bonfman, who owned Seagram's, wanted his Canadian whiskey to be the number 1 selling brand in the U.S., and so he literally shut down the number 1 straight bourbon whiskey in the U.S. and only sold it overseas so that his product can overtake it. And then within years, launches Benchmark to become a premium brand. And it's like, hey, dummy, if you wanted a premium brand, why didn't you just leave Four Roses alone? So next on my list is Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirits. Now, I was a little bit conflicted on this one. It's made by Wild Turkey. It is also 101 proof, sounding familiar. We've already talked about Wild Turkey 101. But it's priced at $59.99. So this is part of the reason why it's a little bit controversial.
What
right?
the heck, man?
And so I will admit that this is the worst value of the the lineup that they have over at Wild Turkey.
Just pick up this guy.
But I do like it. It's a little bit more complex. It is a single barrel, which is the main difference between the two.
Yes.
The age range for this is 6 to 10 years. It's not age stated, but it says that it's usually going to be an 8-year-old. So, I find it to be slightly more complex, and I think that they're picking the barrels that were unique and whatnot. Otherwise, it would have just gone into a blend for 101.
Yeah.
But moving right along, number 9 on my list, Weller Special Reserve. For those of you who live in areas that Weller Special Reserve is allocated, I apologize. But it's very easy for us to find here in Texas.
And it's very good.
And it's a solid product. It's 90 proof. It's made by Buffalo Trace. It is $24.99 for a 750. What we have pictured here is a 175 because that's what I had.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is it's just an easy citrus forward weeder that you can sip. So it's got a little bit of a citrusy, orangey kind of thing going on. And this is something that I'll pour. It's only 90 proof. And so let's say I'm watching a movie and I'm not wanting to really concentrate and break down the flavors of a whiskey, but I want something that's good, but I'm going to be sipping for a while, so I don't want to drink something that's 125 proof. I'm probably going to go to this guy.
Yeah.
So factoid on this, Weller was originally made by Stitzel-Weller Distillery and was the source of the whiskey that made Pappy Van Winkle famous. And they are both now made by Buffalo Trace, both Van Winkle line and the Weller line from the same mash bill, which for those of you who can't find it, that's why. It is the easier to find version of Van Winkle. And last but certainly not least.
Not least at all.
I have been sipping on the Prideful Goat 6-year bourbon, which for those of you, full disclosure, I am part owner of this brand. It was co-founded by me and my business partner, Christopher Hart, in conjunction with Gulf Coast Distillers, who is the independent bottler. The juice is actually from MGPI out of Indiana. And the proof on batch 1 was 114.8 because it is cash strength.
Yeah.
And the price point is $64.99, so basically $65. But prices vary based on shipping and local taxes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it is my brand. I love it. Factoid on this one is that the brand got started kind of on accident.
I've heard this story. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I went to an event at the distillery, met the owner, asked for a single barrel. When we tried to do the single barrel, we found out that the product that we were going to bottle had already been put in batches, and we couldn't just do a single barrel. It was going to be this massive release, and I was doing it in conjunction with Christopher Hart, and I called him and I said, what do we do? This is probably more bottles than we anticipated trying to pass through. And he said, let's just start a new brand. And we did, and here we are. You should be able to find it in California, New Mexico, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Florida. And if you are not in one of those states, Sealbox will ship it directly to your door. Even if they say they don't ship to your area, you can buy the product, say that you want local pickup, and then send them a shipping label, and they will affix it to your box and send it right to you.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, I almost put TPG on my list too.
Did you?
I did. I mean, I've been sipping the hell out of it recently, especially that 6-year because it just came out and I just love it. So
yeah, it's weird.
It belongs on there.
You'll be sipping on it and then you're like, I taste something different than I tasted last time. And like, it just keeps changing in the glass. So it's a fun one to sip.
It's awesome.
So in conclusion, you don't really have to drink allocated whiskey to get good whiskey. And we recommend you switch it up.
Yeah, switch it up. Get you a good 4 or 5 in rotation for a month or two. And then decide, hey, I'm going to branch out and try a few different other ones. And that's really how I got started in collecting whiskey. Is I was always the person that drank the same 4 or 5 whiskeys all the time. And I had one birthday party and everyone brought me whiskey. And all of a sudden I had 15 bottles of whiskey in my collection. I'm like, this is cool. I can drink something different every night. And everyone can enjoy a new pour every time they come over. So this is how you get started, guys, is expanding yourself, trying new things, and like Randy said, you can find the good stuff on the shelves.
That's right. So if this is your first time watching, we'd love to tell you about our show philosophy. We're all about bringing people together around bourbon. And that's something that's personally important to me because I lost a loved one to suicide in 2014. And in the aftermath, I was looking for opportunities to create community and connection. And I wanted people to know that they had a place with, people who cared about them, so they didn't feel the way that my brother did when he took his life. And I started noticing how whiskey brought people together, like even really diverse groups of people. And I thought, I want to use this. So part of the reason why we have the podcast is because we want to get you connected to whiskey and let the whiskey do the rest of the work and get you connected to others. But in that process, we did see the underbelly of the whiskey trolls and people being hateful to others online. And that motivated us to start Bourbon Real Talk Community so that you could have a forum where there weren't trolls. But it also made me realize that if somebody can hate you online that doesn't really know you, there's nothing that keeps me from loving you online, even though I don't really know you. And that's why we end every podcast the same way. And that's this. If you woke up this morning and you're unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that we love you. We'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. Yeah, and
This is my first time talking today.
a little more energy. You know?
Oh, okay, yeah.
A little more energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get loose.
Let's get loosey.
You know what it is? We hadn't had no whiskey.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So people are always asking us, what are our daily drinkers? What are those shelf-available, affordable bourbons that you can go to any store and pick up and keep on your shelf and enjoy every day? Well, if you want to know our top 10 affordable sippers, stick around. How was that for energy?
Hell yeah, bruh.
I was so energized.
I was so energized. I feel it in my nuggets.
Feel it in my plums. The Maker's Mark, just straight out the bottle is, what was that called? You just call it regular?
I just call it regular.
Okay. The regular's Maker Mark. Stupid.
Not enough whiskey.
Yes. All right. At least I'm getting some outtakes.
We got outtakes.
We got outtakes this time. Okay.
I hate it when there's no outtakes.
Check that off the list. Now we can move on. All right.
That we love you. We'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. Cheers.
Cheers. The first time you didn't do it and I did it. How dare you?
I almost messed up, man. But I did it.
You know what I noticed is yours are a higher price point because you have way more money than I do. And these are my little shelfers over here, my little cheap shelfers.
You want to know the truth? The
And
reason
you got
why
these expensive bottles over here.
the only reason why mine are more expensive is because he got to pick his top 5 first.
No, he's rich. That's why. Just throw away the money.